Okay, this is the second half of week 1's assignment, chapter 14.2. On the first page, it talks about the origin of life. People thought life could be created from things. So, for example, at one time, people thought that mice could be created by placing damp hay and corn in a dark corner, or that mud could give rise to worms, insects, and fish. So they thought certain conditions or things would cause animals or flies to come into existence, that they would just show up. Let's see. So also there is in the 1920s, they talked about primordial soup, and that they hypothesized that the origins of life came from a mix of certain gases, organic molecules, that had a reaction, and that there was an electric discharge, maybe from lightning, that created the energy source. The theory, let's go back, the theory that, like, say we could create mice from corn and dampness and mud, was an early idea called spontaneous generation, or yes, which is going to be replaced by another theory, okay, by Pasteur. And Pasteur did, if you look at the figure up there, as he was able to prove that if no air gets into those containers there, that no microorganisms are allowed in, and it remains very clean, very sterile, that no new life can be created. Only when the container is open and microorganisms are allowed into the liquid would there be more life, or life would be created, not more life. So only life can create life, and this is called the theory of biogenesis. So Miller and Urey, I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name, looked at simple organic molecules and said that they could be made from inorganic compounds. Their final reaction products in these experiments were amino acids and sugars, as well as nucleotides. So basically, they're saying that simple organic molecules can be made from inorganic compounds. And we'll look more at that a little bit later and see exactly how that's important or not. So making protein. So they're looking at how life could have been created, and what are the pieces to that puzzle to creating life. So they're saying that wherever the first organic molecule came from, so they don't know where this first organic molecule came from, but they know that the next step must have been the formation or the forming of proteins. So amino acids or protein is made up of amino acids. When amino acids bind together, then they become proteins. So they were looking at everything, and the scientists were thinking that the clay that was part of the earth, the sediment in the early oceans, could have provided a framework for protein assembly. So basically, you see the brown in that figure is kind of the glue that stuck those amino acids together and created protein. Another step that's important to all life would be genetic coding. You have a computer, it needs a code in order to process information. Same thing with humans and life forms. So you need this genetic coding. Okay, so how would that have come about? So again, they're looking at clay crystals, that they could have provided an initial template for RNA replication. So researchers have been able to demonstrate that RNA systems are capable of evolution by natural selection. Some RNAs also could have been like enzymes. These RNA molecules, called ribosomes, could have carried out some of early life processes. Another important step in the evolution of life was the formation of membranes. Researchers have tested ways of enclosing molecules in membranes. So a membrane is like an envelope, okay? It seals, or maybe even like your skin, okay? It's a membrane. Not exactly the same thing, but sort of, kind of. Or a glove on your hand. Okay, so the connections between the various chemical events and the overall path from molecules to cells remains unresolved. So they don't know for sure. So these are hypotheses about how they think that life was formed. On the next page, we have cellular evolution. So how do cells change, okay, over time? What were the earliest cells like? Scientists don't know because the first life left no fossil. The earliest fossils are 3.5 billion years old. In 2004, scientists announced the discovery of what appeared to be fossilized microbes in volcanic rock. This suggests that very early in Earth's history, that cellular activity had become established. It also suggests that early life might have been linked to volcanic activity. And then also, what would have also been very good for life to form would be the ozone layer. And that's that, again, like our membrane or our shield or protective layer, that ozone layer that goes all the way around the planet Earth is like a shield that helps life form because it's blocking out a lot of those UV rays that are harmful. The next page is the Endosymbiont Theory, and so this is an interesting idea. So scientists think some prokaryotic evolved into eukaryotic cells. Okay, so I'll do my best to try to explain this. Let's look at the next page. They have a figure. Where am I? There we go. This page. And so you can kind of read through the descriptions there. So you've got this early cell. And it goes into this other cell, kind of like a parasite, like a tick on a dog. The cells were protected and produced energy for this. So the two work together to help each other, okay? And then over millions of years, the one cell became part of the other cell. It became a piece of it. I don't know if you guys remember organelles, all those little pieces inside of the cells, all those things in the cells that have functions. Okay, so, and then some of the, again, some of them formed a good relationship where they helped each other with photosynthetic bacteria, which contains photosynthetic pigments, which probably means not much to us since we're not biologists. But the point is that they had a relationship where you have two cell types and they are helping each other, and that is a symbiotic relationship. Okay, so going back to the photosynthesis part, remember photosynthesis has to do with plants. Okay, so if some of these cells got inside of these other cells, they became the chloroplast. You remember that's the important thing. That's the organelle for photosynthesis. And so that would be creating a plant cell. Okay? Okay, so we have vocabulary. There's not a lot of vocabulary. I think there was only 3 words for this chapter. So again, you're going to do, I have spontaneous generation, theory of biogenesis, Endosymbiont Theory. I put the definition, and then I Googled and copy pasted my image. Okay, so that's what you need to do there. Okay, and then summary notes. Okay, so I took, again, I'm just doing post-it notes throughout the chapter and collecting ideas, and then you're putting it into a summary, okay? People thought life could be created by things like raw meat being left out. They thought because flies seemed to be born out of the meat. This was called spontaneous generation, which we later learned this is not true. Okay, so later people started to understand the theory of biogenesis, that life comes from life. The primordial soup was an early idea about how life was created. They thought that gases, organic molecules, and energy created life. Life needed the first organic molecules to make proteins. Scientists think that clay particles in soil may have helped. Life also needed coding like DNA and RNA. Scientists found fossils of early cells of microbes in volcanic rocks 3.5 billion years ago. They think that volcanoes might be part of early life. When the ozone layer was formed, it helped more life form because the ozone layer is like a protective shield for life. The Endosymbiont Theory says that simple cells may have become part of more complex cells. Okay, so that's a summary. Again, it's a suggestion. It's not, do not copy it word for word, please. Okay. Okay, sorry, that took a little bit longer than I wanted. Okay. Biology assignment, I believe, is just a copy of what your teachers want you to do throughout a copy of the packet. I'm not going to go over that. I'm going to move on to the chapter assessment. So chapter 14 assessment, it says, choose the vocabulary term from the study guide page that best describes each of the following phrases. Okay, so number 1, determining the age of a fossil by radioactive elements is called radiometric dating. 2, the remains or evidence of an organism is a fossil. 3, scientist who studies fossils is a paleontologist. 4, according to the table above, if 1/4 of the original radioactive carbon is present in a fossil, what is the fossil's age? Okay, so 11,460. Okay, so this one was a little confusing to me. I had to go on the internet and look at a chart to help me. But I looked at the carbon-14, and if I have 1/4 of something, let's see. So it ended up doubling, I believe. But we can go over that a little bit more. That was a little bit tricky. Number 5, which isotope would be best for measuring the age of a rock layer, estimated to be about 1 million years old? So on this one, I was just looking at the chart of the half-life and looking at the number that was closest to 1 million. So I put the beryllium A for that one. Okay. Which fossil type provides the most anatomical information to paleontologists? So the amber, D, is the one that looks like it's golden, like honey, and the animal is actually trapped inside of it. So it's like sap from a tree, but it's gotten really hard, but it's preserved that animal right into it. So that provides a lot of information. Okay. 7, which is the half-life of the radioactive isotope shown in the graph? So, excuse me. So if we go to the half-life, we'll see that it's 18 years. Okay? So 50% on the chart, if you are on the Y, the percent of remaining isotopes, go up to the 50 and then drag your line across to time and you'll get to 18 years, okay? 8. Assuming that you can only date materials that has at least 1% of the radioisotope remaining, which age would be too old to date with this isotope? So that would be 125 years. Because you can see that it only goes up so far, right? Okay. The isotopes are pretty tricky ones, so if you're feeling a little confused, that's okay, so am I. So just do the best you can, okay? All right. Number 9, what is the name of the period that followed extensive glaciation in the Precambrian? Okay, so number 9 is Precambrian, okay? You go back to your chapter, it'll tell you that, okay? Number 10, nearly all fossils occur in what kind of rocks? Okay, so I have sedimentary. I guess they don't happen in igneous or metamorphic rock. All right, so 11, how does the law of superposition help paleontologists? You remember, it's the layers, okay? So if I bury something in the ground and then I bury something else on top of it and keep going and going over a gajillion million years, then I can study that. I know the order of which things happened and which animals and plants lived during the time period. 12. Explain the geologic timescale using an analogy other than a ribbon of time. Okay, so I put it was like a timeline, something you would like do in a history class that would have like major events in the different species. 13, it says, calculate the percentage of Earth's existence occupied by the Cenozoic era, 65 million years. Show your work. Okay, so the Earth's existence is, say, 4.6 billion years. And the Cenozoic era is 65 million years. So 0.65 divided by 4.6 equals 14.13%. Okay? All right, 14, infer. Imagine that you found a piece of amber in a sedimentary rock layer. What environment likely was present at the time of the fossil's formation? So I was thinking that trees would have to be part of the environment because the amber comes from tree sap. 15. Describe a fossil type and how it helps paleontologists understand an organism's anatomy. So, molten cast are imprints. Let's see here. Imprints that are left from animals or plants, okay? The molten casts are going to give an outline to the paleontologist of the structure of the fossil. Okay, so like the photo, that looks like an imprint to me. So it doesn't show you the insides of it really, but it shows you the basic structures. Okay, 16. If you found the above fossil of a flowering plant in a layer of rock, what would you conclude about the age of the layer? Would you look in layers above or below the layer with the flower to learn about the Permian mass extinction? Okay, so I would estimate it to be 250 million years old. I would look at the, the above layer to see what happens next. The reason the 250 million years old is they gave you a clue with the Permian mass extinction because it occurred around that time period. Okay? 17, vocabulary review. Replace the underlying words with the correct vocabulary term from the study guide page. The belief that organisms originate from non-living matter was disproven by Reddy and Pasteur. Okay, so 17, spontaneous generation was what people believed in. Remember the mice in the barn. Okay, 18. The explanation that bacteria might have lived inside prokaryotic and eventually became organelles was proposed by Lynn Margulis. And again, that was the Endosymbiont Theory, okay? 19. Pasteur's experiments led to which theory? The theory of biogenesis, okay? So basically that there wasn't spontaneous generation. So theory of biogenesis is basically life comes from life, okay? It can't come from mud or corn or darkness or water unless there are organisms already in there. All right, 20. The organisms represented in the photo above had which effect on the earth, on early earth? Okay, so I looked at these rocks here, and I do not have a clue what they are. I tried to Google them, but I don't know what they are. I didn't find them in the chapter. So I took a guess on 20, and I said they increased oxygen. Okay, if you guys figure out what those rocks are, let me know, okay? 21. When did the fossils of organisms like those in the photo first appear in the fossil records? Again, wasn't sure what those rocks were. So 21B, 2 million years ago. Okay, 22. Clay most likely was involved in which process? And you remember that clay was involved in a few things. So C, providing a framework for amino acid chains. So they were helping those amino acids to come together to make those proteins is a critical step in the formation of life, okay? And then 24, bend and iron formations are important evidence for which idea in the early evolution of life, okay? So 24A, photosynthetic autotroph. So the banded iron was dealing with oxygen, and photosynthetic is, with photosynthesis, that photosynthesis is creating oxygen, okay? Oops. Okay, almost there. Okay, so we have 25. What would you expect the first step to be in the emergence of life from non-living matter? Okay, so from non-living matter. So you would need an organic molecule to exist before you could have the emergence from non-living life, okay? 26. Simple organic, wait. Explain the difference of the Miller-Urey experiment for understanding the origins of cells. So, they had simple organic materials could be made from inorganic compounds. 27. Which evidence do you think is most important for the endosymbiont hypothesis and why? Okay, so prokaryotic cells. Okay, so I'm going to skip 27, come back because my brain just went blank there, okay? 28. The sequence the hypothesized events that led from a lifeless earth to the presence of eukaryotic cells, okay? So they were saying that they don't know where the first organic molecule came from, but thereafter they said that a critical thing would be for those amino acids to bind with each other, with hypothesized that it was clay to make protein, and thereafter there would need to be DNA and RNA coding, okay? Let's see. And you can kind of read 28 there to get some of the ideas of that. Okay? Over to the right. And then 29, compare the contributions of ready and Pasteur in disproving spontaneous generation. So remember we talked about Pasteur's experiment. He showed that sterile broth remained free of microorganisms until exposed to air. So the only reason life is getting into stuff is because the microorganisms get into food or liquid, and then they're going to reproduce, and then you have what looks like life coming out of liquid, but it's flying in there and then it's flying out. Okay. 30. How is the hot spring shown above similar to the conditions on early Earth? What kind of organisms can survive in this type of environment? So microorganisms live in hot and chemical waters. Early Earth did not have an ozone layer. Okay. 31. How was evolution affected by the increase in oxygen caused by the first photosynthetic organism? Oxygen is important for most life. Photosynthesis produces life. Carbon, oxygen cycle. Okay? So as there's more oxygen, oxygen gives the ability for there to be more of an explosion of species, more species to come around into existence. Okay, 32. How could a biochemist study DNA sequence provide evidence for the Endosymbiont Theory? So they could look at the DNA or RNA to examine the relationship between different types of cells. Okay, and they also have the ability to use advanced microscopes and all kinds of equipment and understanding that looks at every little piece of the cell to understand what's happening. 33. Analyze and critique the Endosymbiont Theory. What are its strengths and its weaknesses? Okay. So its weaknesses is scientists don't know its early steps. Its strength is that it's able to show the relationship between the two and how they evolved over time. Okay, so one cell is becoming the internal structure, the inside structures, those organelles of another cell. Okay, let's go back up to the one I skipped. Okay, 27, I believe. Okay, so what evidence do you think is most important for the endosymbiont hypothesis and why? I think that's a difficult question, but I would say the fact that life evolved over time and that now you can see some of the characteristics among the two, or I shouldn't say characteristics, but pieces are similar, and that we have plant cells, animal cells, bacterias, and that they over time evolved. Okay? If you have any questions, let me know. I know that was a lot of information. I was my brain was hurting right there at the end. So this will all be on Google Classroom. If you have any questions, text me, call me. This is the end of week 1 assignments. So you have 2 vocabulary charts, 2 summaries, and you have this assessment to turn in, and you're done with a complete week of biology. Okay? Take care. I hope this helped. All right. Bye.